And in this episode, what if the sun suddenly turned red? So, what would happen if the sun did turn red? Would we be fried or frozen? And the answer to that question depends on how red the sun gets. But let's assume it turns a bit more red than this, so stars change color as they age. They are born blue and then they turn white and then they become yellow like our sun. And then they become red giants and then they turn into white dwarfs. So all stars go through these different phases and change colors. But why do they do that? It's because of their surface temperature. Hotter stars are bluer and cooler stars are redder. Stars also get bigger as they age and they end up becoming red giants. This means that if our sun became a red giant, it would expand outwards and engulf the inner planets, including Earth. But don't worry, we have plenty of time before this happens. It will be about 5 billion years from now. Yeah, we're screwed either way, but at least right now we can enjoy the fact that the sun won't swallow the Earth for another 5 billion years. But what if the sun turned red before it became a red giant? What if it suddenly got a bit colder? We know that this could happen because it has happened to other stars out there in space. Our sun is unique and special, and even though it is a normal star, it still has some special properties that make it behave differently to other stars. In 2018, astronomers discovered a star out in space which had gone through something called a red giant phase and had then reversed it. The star is called Pi 1 and it's about 1,300 light years away. The astronomers believe that it is not actually a single star, but two stars that are orbiting each other and then suddenly merging together. When the two stars merged, it caused the outer layers of the star to expand and cool, turning it into a red giant. And then after the merger, the core started to heat up again and the outer layers started to contract back in. Now the star is smaller and hotter than it was before. Basically, the star went from this to this and then back to this. But if something like this happened to our sun, would we end up with an Earth-sized sun or would it expand and freeze us? If our sun were to suddenly shrink in size, then yes, we would be screwed. The Earth would be burnt to a crisp. Let me explain. The reason why the Earth doesn't get burnt up by the sun is because of the distance between the sun and the Earth. The sun is so far away from the Earth that its heat can't reach us and burn us up. If the sun were to suddenly shrink in size and come closer to the Earth, then we would be burnt up. Think of it like when you take a match and you bring it close to some paper. The paper doesn't catch fire until the match gets really close to the paper. At a certain distance, the paper will not catch fire because there isn't enough heat coming from the match to ignite the paper. But once you bring it close enough, the paper catches fire. The same thing would happen to the Earth. If the sun were to come closer to the Earth, we would be burnt up. Okay, so what if instead of shrinking in size, the sun got bigger? Well, that's good news. If the sun were to expand in size, we wouldn't get burnt up because the sun would be further away. So the distance between the sun and the Earth would increase. The bad news is that the sun getting bigger would cause Earth to get colder. Again, let me explain. The reason why the Earth is habitable and doesn't freeze over is because of the distance between the Earth and the sun. The sun is so close to the Earth that its heat can reach us and warm us up. If the sun were to expand in size, it would move further away because of the extra size. This means that the distance between the sun and the Earth would increase. Because the sun would be further away, it would be harder for its heat to reach the Earth and warm us up. Instead, the Earth would get colder and we would freeze over. Let's imagine that our sun becomes a red giant. Then what would happen to the Earth? As mentioned earlier, it will take about 5 billion years for this to happen. First, Mercury would be scorched and burnt up. Venus would be next, and then it would start heading towards the Earth. The sun would become so big that it would engulf the Earth. There wouldn't be any life left on the Earth at this point. All of the water would have boiled away long before the sun reached the Earth. Okay, so what if the sun didn't turn into a red giant, but instead just became a bit redder? The sun suddenly becomes a bit redder and the Earth starts to get colder. People start to panic because they think the world is ending. But the reality is that it is not a big deal. The world isn't ending. The Earth isn't gonna freeze over or anything. Sure, it's gonna get a little bit colder, but that's it. Maybe we'd need an extra blanket on our beds at night. Scientists did conclude that the slight change in color of the sun was actually a supernova explosion of a star that is very far away from us. Basically, a massive star out in space exploded. That's what caused the change in color, rather than it actually being our sun changing color. Our sun is not going to explode because there is nothing around it that could trigger such an explosion. And that's probably why you clicked on this video. You wanted to find out if the world was going to end if the sun turned red. But you might be wondering, why do we care if the sun goes supernova? Why does it matter? Well, the reason why it matters is because of the radiation that gets released during a supernova explosion. When a massive star out in space explodes, it releases huge amounts of energy. Some of this energy comes in the form of radiation. This radiation travels across space at the speed of light and eventually reaches us here on the Earth. Now you might be thinking, surely if it takes years for the radiation to reach us, we would notice it coming. We would see the star explode, and then years later we feel the effects of the radiation. But the thing is, stars are so far away that it is hard to tell if they explode unless it is very close to us. Take the supernova that happened in 1054 AD, for example. This supernova created a Crab Nebula, and it was witnessed by Chinese astronomers. They saw the star explode, and then they saw the glowing cloud of gas and dust expanding outwards. This is what remains of the star today, but most supernovas happen behind the Milky Way or in other galaxies, and we don't see them. It's only when the radiation reaches us that we realize there was a supernova out in space. This radiation is dangerous. It kills pretty much everything in its path. During the 1918 flu pandemic, there were people who survived the disease but then died shortly afterwards from secondary bacterial pneumonia. The radiation from a supernova could cause a similar effect. It would weaken our immune system, and then bacteria and viruses would attack us and kill us. Radiation can also damage DNA and cause cancer. A supernova could cause a spike in cancer around the world. And if it is severe enough, it could wipe out a lot of the species on the planet. It is unlikely that it would wipe out all of the species on the planet, but it could definitely wipe out a lot of the species on the planet. So, if the sun were to suddenly turn red, it wouldn't be good news for us humans. It would be bad news. Thankfully, our sun is not going to explode because it is not a massive star. Massive stars are many times bigger than the sun. If our sun were to become a red giant, then we would be screwed because the Earth would get burnt up. Or if our sun were to shrink in size, then we would also be screwed because the Earth would freeze over. But if our sun were to just become a bit redder, then it wouldn't be a big deal. It would be a bit chilly outside, but that's it. We would need an extra blanket on our beds at night. If you enjoyed this video, then stay tuned for more videos. Thanks for watching.